Welcome to Quantum Life Theory. Christy and I have been working on a way to talk about the Joshua teachings and the White Light teachings in a way that everyone can understand, no matter where their belief system is, whether they're into the spirituality stuff or whether they're more into science stuff. And so quantum life theory is a scientific approach to creating a life that interacts with the environment, the quantum field, the universe, in a way that is effective. We've discovered that there is a scientific basis for everything we're doing, and that it can be explained this way. And that when you understand how the system is really working and what you're offering in the way of energy and feeling, you'll understand this in a completely different light. And we've gotten so many insights from doing this over the last 2 months from working on this, that it's inspired us to create something completely new. And this is a interactive way to understand how your feelings, which is communicated really through your perception of yourself, which is your identity. So I'm going to start with imagining a what if scenario. What if you could actually be and do everything that you want? What if you could actually know what is most valuable to you? What is most important to you? What aligns with the truth of who you are rather than the identity that you think you are? What if you could operate in a way that would allow the quantum field to provide you with everything you truly want? We've come to this idea, and it was first given to us, that what you are really wanting to do is become something. When you become something, you manifest that instantly. The easiest way to think of this is when your child is born, you become a parent simultaneously to that manifestation. You don't become a parent before the child's manifested or sometime after. At exactly the same time, you become a parent when your child is born. When I was a kid living in San Diego and all my friends were surfing, I wanted to become a surfer. So I would paddle out there with them and I would try to get on waves and fall and fall and fall. And the moment I was caught a wave, I became a surfer. And so from that point on, I could catch any wave, not all the time, but I knew I could do it. When I went in business, I was trying to become successful or trying to become wealthy or trying to become whatever. And the moment that I became successful, I was successful. A lot of that, though, was in a false perception of what I wanted. It was an ideal that I thought that would get me like, love, and respect from others, a successful business guy, or would get me the things I wanted, money in the bank. When you have an idea of something you want and you think that you can get it without becoming that, it doesn't really work. The reason diets don't work. You will become lean and thin when you become lean and thin. And until that time happens, you will be operating from the identity of overweight or whatever it is. It's not really manifesting the thing you want. It's becoming that which equals the thing you want. And there is something going on here at a deeper level, at a quantum level, at a neuropsychological level, at a biological or a mental, physical, spiritual level. Quantum life theory is a theory based in the structure of physical things within this universe. And we are a physical thing. And so if you're a tree, you have an experience of a tree. If you're a cat, you have an experience of a cat. So you have to be the thing to manifest what you want. And even the term manifestation is not really a term that goes hand in hand here. It would only make sense that a parent would have a child. So it is a conclusion that the manifestation is totally obvious and compatible with that which you've become. If you want better health, you become something. You become one who is healthy. And from that perspective, then you will know exactly what to do. You will know exactly why you're inspired to do something or where that inspiration will lead. And the inspiration doesn't lead to the manifestation of the thing you want. It leads to you becoming the thing you want, the person that it would make sense having. Now, we all know from what we've learned is that there are things you think you want and things you truly want. And so QLT is all about looking at the things you truly want, the life you truly want, the relationships you truly want, the health you truly want, the finances you truly want. It's not about manifesting the things so that you feel successful or you feel secure or you feel loved or any of this. It's about learning how to operate within an energy field that will allow you to become or to have the identity that aligns with the obviousness of the thing that you want, that will manifest it obviously. We've all been operating in a way that isn't effective because we've been creating these ideals that we think when those things are manifested, we will feel something. What we know for sure is that our creations are based in how we already feel. Now, it's one thing to have a vision board or set goals. And this is what you will learn later as Chrissy explains, matter moving matter. It's a very basic idea. We think that by efforting and struggling, we can manifest whatever we want. But just look at diets. Diets are notoriously ineffective because we're efforting and struggling and moving matter to change some condition, and it doesn't work the way we think it works. We are going to learn how to be energy moving matter and then energy moving energy. So quantum life theory is a blueprint for life based in 10 pillars that Chrissy will talk about that will allow you to understand what it is you truly want and will create a roadmap or a blueprint individual to you that it will allow you to do it. It all starts with this idea of identity. And I'm going to talk briefly about identity, and then I'll turn it over to Christy, and she'll go into more of the science of this. But if you imagine who you think you are now, how did you get here? Well, you got here through experiences and creating a perception of reality, but only at the time that those experiences happened. So think about when you were 4 years old and you had some experience, and from that experience, you concluded or perceived something. You learned something. Now, imagine you're 4 years old and your mother's teaching you how to tie your shoes, and you learn to tie your shoe unemotionally through repetition. So you did it day in, day out, every single day, and in a year, by the time you're 5, you could tie your shoes. But now you learn something else. Maybe you learn that you're clumsy. You have, an ice cream cone, the ice cream drops off the cone on the floor, and your mother calls you clumsy. She's saying it in a way that creates some emotion with you. And because you have this emotion, instead of having the repetition, this thing gets locked in the neural pathways in your brain and becomes part of the wiring or the connectome of your brain. This wiring then is strong because of the intense emotion that you felt at the time. And as a 4-year-old, the ice cream was very valuable to you, and your mother's opinion were valuable to you. So the experience then created a dynamic where you perceived your reality in a way where the most valuable thing that you owned at that time was lost, and that your mother may have said something to you and told you to be more careful, what are you doing? Or this is no big deal, diminished whatever it was, and you had some emotion, and that emotion created a very strong pathway. So next time you had an ice cream or anything, you operated in some fear of losing it or some fear of being clumsy or some fear. And so this is how you associate every single thing. Now imagine this happening 100 times a day, every single day of your life as a child, without the perception of the adult who says, it's just an ice cream cone, we can get ice cream anywhere. To the child, it's like, this is the most important thing to me, and it can be lost at any time. And if I lose it, I'm going to be admonished or called wrong or called bad for doing it. And not only am I going to lose the ice cream, I'm going to lose the love of my mother, that sort of thing. From that perspective of the child, where these were really intense experiences that you cannot even remember now, because if you look back at them from this perspective, you'll say, well, that was no big deal at the time. When I was 4 years old, my earliest memory, we're living in Canada. I'm playing with my brother, who I absolutely love, and I can feel the love for my brother. I can remember this vividly. He's playing with my favorite toy, which was this toy truck with this little fireman in it. It was a little fire truck. And of course, I'm letting him play with it. I love my brother. And then my brother smashes it to pieces. He's 2 years old. And instantly, I feel this shut off in my heart. And I lost my favorite toy, and my brother willingly and intentionally destroyed it in front of my eyes without remorse, right? How could someone I love so much do this to me? And so I instantly built up this perception of him as my enemy. And literally for the rest of our childhood, we fought like two dogs. So these things that happened to, that were happening in my experience, from my mother's perspective, it was no big deal. It was a $2 toy or whatever it was. And you could easily replace that. But for me, it was the most precious possession I had, and was destroyed by the person that I loved the most. No one outside of that, my brother, my mother, my father, anyone who witnessed that, could imagine the intensity of the emotion I felt and the ramifications from that one experience. But that created a connection in my brain that to this day lingers there, that says, nobody cares about me. And so I have manifestation events and I have experiences that reinforce that, because now my wiring is designed to keep on the lookout for any situation where it appears that someone does not have my best interests in mind, does not care about me. And it pops up all the time. I have, experiences like this all the time, because I'm wired to look for them. There is a lot of sensory data coming in that we filter out. And it's filtered out specifically because of this mechanism, that we are wired to stay safe. We're wired to survive. We're wired to look at to hear the rustle in the bushes and to see it moving around. There could be a lion in there. And so our attention goes to these things instantly. And when it's an innocent event that doesn't mean anything, we give it meaning. And as we give things meaning, it's wiring the brain with that meaning. So we all arrive here at this place, and we know it's perfect because we all got here. But we don't have to be this way anymore. But how do we change it? How do we let go of that and adopt a new identity? How do we rewire our brain? This is the question. This is the reason we do not change. And so from here, Christy will take over.
Thank you. All right, I'm going to back up just a little bit, and where Gary was talking about this what if idea. And the thought is, what if all of us for centuries, humans, have been going about our lives in opposition to the way things really work? So what if everything that we believed about hard work, opportunity, education, diet, exercise, commitment, positive thinking, honesty, charity, what if all of those things that we believe about that were never true, and we're operating as if they are? So our society is very responsive to the most accepted scientific theory of the time. So hundreds of years ago, right? Newtonian physics. That is what was the accepted theory of the time. And Newtonian physics is grounded in determinism, reductionism, materialism, and separatism. Newtonian physics says that everything is separate, everything can be separated, that everything should be logical and orderly, run like clockwork, it should go in a linear fashion, and that things should be very predictable and controllable. And that paradigm, that Newtonian paradigm, encourages separation. So this is how our society has been developed. It was developed that way, through the Industrial Revolution, the Age of Enlightenment. And this is what our great-grandparents, our grandparents, our parents, and even us, to an extent, have grown up with this idea. So quantum physics, this new theory, which really is the most successful theory of physics to date, has a completely different idea, completely different principles behind it. And those principles are complementary, contextual, conscious, and connected. Quite a bit different from this Newtonian paradigm that we've been living under. So these quantum principles go from the largest thing in space, the largest thing in cosmos, all the way down through the human and into the smallest particle. So these principles, they just don't apply to atomic particles and the subatomic world. They are the basic fabric of our entire existence we're beginning to understand. So they reveal a deeper truth about who and what we are and what this universe is. It can start to inform our overall view of reality. So if you think about how our societal systems could change if we start to embrace these theories of connectedness and contextuality, then if we apply this new way of thinking to business and economics and relationship psychology, those sorts of things, it starts to shift everything. We reinvent ourselves based on quantum physics, right? This is really interesting. So Thomas Kuhn said something that's really poignant here, and it's that all significant breakthroughs are break with old ways of thinking. So this quantum physics, this way of approaching our lives, is a break with an old way of thinking, a break with this old way of thinking in this Newtonian paradigm. So even though we have an understanding with this quantum physics, we understand that, think about MRIs and digital technology. These things help us to know that we're living in this connected environment, but we just don't put this into our day-to-day lives. We understand that we're living this connected world. We know that energy and vibration are the fundamental things. We know they're more fundamental, than they are relative, right? But we're just not applying them in our daily lives. So what if we began to do that? And that's what this quantum life theory is about. Concept is one thing, right? But changing how we think and how we perceive is a whole nother thing. And it requires a daily practice, and it requires solid concepts of those to practice daily. To understand it, let's talk about the quantum field a little bit. If you imagine an invisible field, right? This field exists throughout the universe. There are actually many, but we're going to talk about it in terms of one right now. This field exists and is responsible for the creation of all matter. It is everything. It's how matter is either created or destroyed. It is within this field. Now, energy is never lost. It's really never destroyed. It's either shaped into matter, right? Into the form of some physical thing or some physical system, or it remains within the field. The simplest quantum field to begin to understand is the electromagnetic field and the electron field. And these two fields are continuously interacting, and they interact with each other, and their energy and momentum are transferred. When these energies are transferred, as they interact with each other, these excitations are created or destroyed. So for instance, what we would picture, if you imagine an electron is being absorbed, right? And it's being absorbed by a photon. In quantum electrodynamics, this interaction, the specific interaction between these two, and this interaction between them and the field where the electromagnetic photon loses its energy, in essence, it loses its energy, or one excitation quantum, and the electron field gains this energy. So it's a transference of energy. It's a transference of energy and momentum and angular momentum. Are you following me so far? It's heady, but we're going to break it down a little bit more. This field exists, and it doesn't exist within our space and time. It exists outside of space and time. And so what this means is that as these things interact, they are independent of space and time. And we're going to call this non-local coherence, right? These things are lined up and they're interacting with each other outside of space and time. This really is the fundamental aspect of reality. So it implies that beyond energy and matter, there's something else. There's information that's intrinsic, right, within this universe, within this quantum field. That is a really special kind of information. It not only transmits, right, but it plays a vital role in forming nature from the subatomic particle to us, to the cosmos, all scales. And this is how we start to understand this unified state. We live in this connected universe. So if this field is an invisible field of energy and information, and we know that it is, you can't see it, it's invisible, but you can't see microwaves, you can't see radio waves, you can't see Wi-Fi waves, infrared waves, but you know they exist. So this quantum field is this invisible field of energy. And because it exists outside of space and time, it means there's no bodies, there are no things, there's no time, there's no places in this quantum field. It is just possibility. That's what exists in this quantum field. It is, in effect, the intelligence of the smallest subatomic particle to the most advanced life form, right? This is a dimension in a sorts where every potential exists. Every potential for you exists. Every potential for you to be healthy, wealthy, successful, to have great relationships. Essentially, it holds the potential for you to be the most evolved version of you. But you can't really connect to this invisible field with your body. You can get there and you can become aware of it with your body, but that is all you can do. So this electromagnetic field that's invisible, that we know is the thought in this part is the electrical charge, and the feeling is the magnetic charge. So how you think and how you feel broadcasts into this field. And what you broadcast out there into this field is what you get back. So the field responds then to this broadcast. It's both responsive and reflective. Let's look at this field as it maybe relates to our lives. So if infinite possibilities exist in this field, then why do you suppose so many of us cannot really effectively change our experience? We stay within the same socioeconomic status. We kind of have similar relationship experiences throughout our lives. We have similar health experience throughout our lives. Why is it that most of us cannot change our experience if possibility exists in this field and we're interacting with this field? If every possibility exists, why are we experiencing the same things? It's because we are putting the same energy into the field, which is what Gary was talking about with identity. And we'll go back to that, and that's going to be broken down deeply. But we're putting the same energy into the field with our thoughts and our emotions. So your mind is your brain in action, and your emotion is just energy in motion. So since the field is responsive and reflective, then we experience the same things over and over again. Now, how and why? When you first wake up in the morning, before you open your eyes, you become aware. You become somewhat conscious. Yes, you have no idea really of who you are, where you are, really what you are, but you are awareness. This is this universal state of potential. This is potential state of consciousness. It really is just a pure state of beingness and oneness before you open your eyes. Now, the minute you open your eyes, you're fully awake. You're in this state of being able to see everything. And what this is here is not only do I see me, but I see all. So this is the state of beta brainwave, where you now observe, discern, identify, label. It is an active conscious state. So from here, this is where it begins. This is the why we don't really change anything. Because when you wake up every morning, then you start to remind yourself of who you think you are. You start to rebuild this block wall of identity. And you rebuild this brick wall every day based on your past experience. Every experience, every person, every interaction, it's all attached to an emotion. So as you wake up and you start to think about your job and your ex and your boss and your car and your kids, each one of these thoughts has an emotion attached to it. And you use this past experience to generate who you believe yourself to be in this reality based on your past. So now, if you wake up and you create who you are based on your past experience and your past emotions. So you get up and you have coffee and you check your email and check your Twitter, Insta, Facebook, TikTok. You've now fully immersed yourself in your outer reality. Your outer reality is responsive and reflective of your thoughts and your emotions. So you've immersed yourself in the reflection of what's going on inside based on the past. What continues to be reflected then is your past, essentially. You might move cities, you might be in a different relationship, but essentially it's going to be the same general experience. The next thing that occurs here, and why another reason that we don't change or that we begin to decline, is this word entropy. Entropy is just a natural law, and it ensures the continuation, this evolutionary process, right? And this natural law, it occurs every level of physical reality. You can't get away from it, and you really don't want to get away from it. You can't fight it, you can't solve it, you can't fix it. It exists to guarantee forward motion and evolution. It just states that order must turn to disorder in time. And the only thing we can do with entropy really is to delay it. We can't fight it, we can't kill it, we just can delay it. Entropy really isn't the thing that causes us to die. It just hastens the process of death. And it's just responsible for that disorder. But it's only kept at bay through growth and through change. And so this takes us back to this identity and this wall of bricks that we have. To keep entropy at bay, we have to learn and grow. And we want to create these new neural pathways in our brain that are constantly being strengthened because we learn something new and we teach what we learn. and we talk about it and we review it and we teach it again and we strengthen these neural pathways in our brain. And as we do that, we are keeping entropy at bay. It doesn't really matter what you learn. Learning will be more interesting, will stay with you longer if you learn and follow something that you are actually interested in. But it really doesn't matter. To keep this process of entropy slowed down and at bay, you just have to learn something new, which means you have to change your identity, or at minimum, add to your identity. You don't have to lose what you think you are. You don't have to smash the brick wall, but you want to understand that these things that you identify with are simply a part of who you are. And what we want to do now is discover more and more of who we are by learning something new and doing something new, learning it with our mind, doing it with our hands, and so that we can then feel it in our being. That is how it goes.
The idea here is that entropy is this evolutionary concept or law that requires that the physical system is growing and changing. Entropy sets in when the physical system stagnates, whether that's a species or an individual. As the species gets comfortable, or as the animal gets comfortable, it's not changing, it's not growing, it's not experiencing, it's not doing new things. Entropy sets in to create either a new obstacle that will require the change. For instance, you might be going to work the same place every day, doing the same things every day, having this routine set in, and suddenly you get laid off from work. This is a new obstacle that's been placed in your way so that you will have to change and have to do something. You might get a diagnosis. It's all these things. Might get a lawsuit, might end a relationship. All these things that are coming in, these things have to come into your life to cause change because you are unwilling to change yourself. However, if you endeavor to do something new or learn something new or take on a new hobby or involve yourself in something difficult or create your own obstacle, in essence, then entropy is kept at bay. The obstacle will not be chosen for you. You get to choose. But it requires that you get out of your comfort zone, because the comfort zone is the pathway to death, the pathway to the end of it all. You all know, we all know that a magnificent, spectacular, interesting, fun, diverse experience of life is what we're all seeking. But there's something in all of us that keeps us from not doing these things, from not acting when we're inspired, from not following our passions and interests, and from maintaining this routine that allows us to feel comfortable. And what it's really doing is it's not involved in anything that will trigger negative emotion. And so because of this way we were brought up and the society that we're in and what we experience as children, and because we're emotionally sensitive, we really feel negative emotion, and we've labeled it as negative because we associate the emotion with some event we thought was wrong or bad. This causes all of us to seek an easy life. We want the money in the bank so we don't have to work. We want to retire so we don't have to work. We want all these things in the future to get out of what we're doing now. One day the kids will move off and that sort of thing, and our life will be easy. The last thing we want is easy. The last thing we want is routine. We want adventure. And adventure is scary because we don't know where it's going to lead. This is what quantum life theory is all about. It's based in these 10 pillars. The pillars very quickly are these. Pillar 1 is learning, knowledge, wisdom. What happens is when you endeavor to learn something new and incorporate it and practice it and even teach it, it creates a small connection, a small new neural connection, and it rewires literally the brain. Not because the other connections are not there anymore, just because you've added to it, and now it's a new thing. With this new wiring of the brain, you will be guided through the frontal cortex. You will open up a divergent focus, and you will notice things that apply to what you just learned. So you'll have an actual experience of it. This locks in the state of wisdom. The second pillar is creating a novel approach to life, which means instead of routine, you shake it up, you change it up, you drive a different way to work, you eat different foods, you go to different restaurants, you travel to places you never thought you'd go to, you do things that you couldn't imagine you would ever do. You seek that which is new. The third is connection. If this quantum idea is total connection with everything, we do no longer seek separation. We lean into everything. We build connections with everyone and everything. We endeavor to anything we do for the reason of connection and the reason of novelty and the reason of learning, right? So we've incorporated all these things into it. We're operating in a completely different or opposite way to how we operated in the past. Again, we're going to have to figure out this fear thing, because the fear thing or the ego thing, the survival instinct is operating in opposition to this new approach to life. And the ego is going to say, don't do that. Don't try that. This is this repetition of previous experiences where you were harmed emotionally in some way. And so this ego is trying to prevent that feeling from coming again. But remember, most of our experiences were in childhood from an innocent perception without all the information. We're operating from that child of the past that was hurt. And this is the only thing that's causing fear. As we endeavor to do the new things, we will gain confidence in those things. And we will gain satisfaction and excitement and more connection than everything we truly want. The fourth pillar is inversion. This is changing how you perceive reality. This is actually looking objectively at your life. And instead of saying, how much can I get from others and negotiation and transaction, flip it around. And it's literally, how much can I give? How much can I serve? How much can I be there for other people? It's uncomfortable not to protect yourself. It's uncomfortable not to negotiate. It's uncomfortable to give more than you receive. It's uncomfortable to not be given credit or not appreciated. But if you don't hold that as value, it's not going to matter, because everything that we hold as value or meaning is dictated from a identity. When you change that identity, or when you soften that, then you can soften the meaning you give to anything, and you can redirect that meaning. You can choose the meaning of it. Pillar 5 is energy or frequency. If we are hiding out, playing it safe, trying to be comfortable, we're giving very little energy off. There's not much going on here. And this is not a system, a physical system that's thriving. It's a system that is hiding. So we are going to do everything to amp up our own physical energy, how we focus on things, what we appreciate, what we're grateful for, how we meditate, how we decide to take walks or exercise, how we focus in the present moment in a conversation with another person. And because of the inversion, we're not looking to get back from them. We're looking to give to them. We don't need this identity to be stroked anymore or to be validated, because we now come from a basis of understanding that identity was never true. It was just a haphazard collection of experiences that formed into who we think we are. There is obviously an intrinsic personality and intrinsic quality to all of us, but that is this golden statue covered with mud. We are washing off the mud. All the mud is the limiting beliefs and the perception of ourselves that was never accurate. Pillar number 6 is inspiration. There is a quality when you receive a thought and that thought is exciting. There is something to that inspiration. Where is it coming from? How is it arriving? We don't know. But when we act on inspiration, we find that we're placed into experiences, and these are catalysts for change. If you think about any physical system changing, think about an ice cube. When you apply heat to that ice cube, you transform it into water. So there was a catalyst to that. And for our purposes, we're going to say the inspiration is the catalyst to change. We understand that fear pops up and that ego thought says, who are you to do that thing or try that thing, or what happens if you fail, or what will people think of you, or you'll lose your identity as a possibility of taking this action that you're inspired to take. When we have a malleable identity, that fear is quieted and it's easier to act on inspiration. When we act on inspiration and we notice the experience and how wonderful it was, or we notice how we now perceive ourselves in a different way than we did before, we see the value now of inspiration, and that is pillar number 6. Pillar number 7 is balance. It's no good having a life where you have a high perspective in one area and a low perspective in another area. Every aspect of this life must be balanced. No good being great at work and terrible in relationships. Great at friendships, but terrible health. This all needs to be balanced. So we apply these pillars across the board to every area of our life. Pillar 8 is perspective. The identity left unchecked will create an automatic perspective. We have power over that perspective. So we can choose our perspectives now. And we can endeavor to look at everything from the highest perspective objectively. Fear is going to cause us to obviously limit that perspective. So we have a different relationship to fear, limiting beliefs. We understand where it's coming from. We understand it's derived from the identity, but we can stop in every moment and we can choose a higher perspective. Pillar 9 is acceptance. We accept that the identity we have now is what we have now. We didn't choose it. It wasn't strategic or intentional. It was layer upon layer upon layer of daily perceptive ideas and experiences going through. And we arrive where we are now. And as we relate to the quantum field now, the reflection is of that identity. There is some energy going on with the feeling that's brought in or created from the perception of that identity to whatever you're looking at. So now we understand that when we accept where we are, we're not fighting. We're not trying to change. We're not wishing things were different. We're not believing that we should have a different interaction with the quantum field, because we're still giving out the same energy. We understand how our lives turned out this way. We realize that the past was always going to happen based in that identity and perspective at the time, interacting with the field at the time. We let go of resentment and regret. And we let go of worry about the future, because we know that now, when we are consciously aware of the energy that we're giving and our perspective, the identity that we're choosing now, rather than haphazardly perceiving as real, we have an opportunity to relate to that quantum field in a new way and experiment with it. We don't know exactly how it works or how to modulate that energy or frequency to get back what we specifically want, but we're going to play with it and we're going to change things up and try new things. And 10 is presence, realizing this is always all happening in the moment. The past is an illusion. The future is a dream. What we're doing right now in this call, we are present in this call. And some of us are focused intently on it, and some of us are reading a book or watching TV while this is happening. That's fine. But if you gave presence to everything you were doing or to more things that you were doing, you would find more information coming in. You would not be split apart. When you're focusing on the past, you're creating your future. When you're worried about the future, you're creating an annoying present. You're creating a feeling in the present. And that feeling in the present, wherever you're distracted, is creating the next present moment. This field of energy around us, we don't know how it works. We can't see it, but imagine that this fireplace behind me is an agreement of energy formed into a fireplace, because that's what I expect and believe, and that's what is always here. It's nothing if we drill down into it other than tiny little atoms whizzing around at some frequency and forming into what looks like a fireplace to me. What I see as this fireplace is based in my identity. You might see it as grand or plain based in your identity, but it's different than what I see. And so we all must understand that we see things differently, but the overall culmination of all our perspectives gives a wide-ranging understanding of what the human experience is. We're doing it separately, but we're interacting with a field of information, bringing energy and experience and things into this field and continuously interacting with it to create one thing and one thing only: new perspectives. If nothing changes, there's no value in any of this, and it can't survive, and it will burn out and die at some point. That goes for the entire universe, that goes for every planet, and that goes for us as well. But if we were changing and growing and fascinated with life and connecting and working with the system, entropy doesn't show up. It doesn't need to place obstacles in our path. When we choose the obstacles, we're choosing to engage and connect. And when we realize that repetition, like a copy of a copy of a copy of a copy, disintegrates, when we understand that our cells are churning out the same cells day in, day out by the same DNA, and then when we realize that possibly, just possibly, by the new energy we're emitting, we can change that DNA. We've seen examples of this. People get better. Why? Because they have a new identity. They release the old identity and they become that which is a disease would not need to be present, because that obstacle is no longer present, that message. The idea here is that we are going to be able to use these pillars to create a unique blueprint for each person, to discover everyone's passions uniquely to them, to validate those passions and say, you cannot fail. This is just a journey, just a experience. When you soften that identity, you will be able to try new things. And when you realize the value in new things and new activities and the limitation of holding on to old ideas and old preferences and old things and doing things the same way everyone does it, but we have so much evidence in every area of our life, in education, churning out those kids in conformity, copy after copy after copy, in marriages that all fail, copy after copy after copy, in health that always decreases with age, entropy, entropy, entropy. It's this idea now that we are going to lean into this life and change it up. And this is going to create joy and satisfaction and create greater energy and feelings and lead to everything we want. This will be an interactive experience. We believe that after a weekend, radical improvement in perspective is going to happen. Spontaneous healing of minor chronic issues are going to happen. And we're going to certify people who want to teach this to others. There will be aspects of this that can be done on Zoom, but how Christy and I are inspired is through these personal interactions and activities that change things up. We're going to play with this idea, have experiences with it, write, put it into a textbook form, train people how to do it, and learn as we're doing. We don't know how to do it. We're going to figure it out. We're going to have our first group, maybe 10 people coming here to the Joshua House in North Carolina in the last weekend of June. If you're interested in being a part of that small group who will experiment, but it's not going to be classroom. It's going to be interactive. It's going to be fun. It's going to be funny. And it's going to shift the way you think about yourself, because you will not leave with the same identity. We have to understand that there is an inside out approach, and that aligns with how this universe works and what quantum physics is all about. It's from this feeling.